Good evening, everyone, and welcome to An Hour with an Angel. I'm Steve Becko, Editor-in-Chief of the Golden Age of Gaia, and with me today is Linda Dillon, Channel for the Council of Love. And Linda, you have just come back from a week away in New Orleans, I believe.
Yes, I have, and I had a raucous good time.
Yeah, good.
You know, it was a chance to get together with some very dear old friends. And
from the beginning, dear.
From the very beginning, actually, yes.
Wow.
Lisa and I met literally, I think 36 years ago at a Lynn Andrews event at the Center for Mental Physics in Joshua Tree, which many of our listeners are probably familiar with because we have broadcast and done gatherings since that time from Joshua Tree. So, yeah, it was a lovely time to spend together. And, you know, New Orleans, which really neither Isaac or I had ever been to, is one of the cities of light. And it's a city of light that, you know, each city of light has a different function, I guess, purpose. And the city of light for New Orleans is art and music and entertainment. And as I said in my Daybreak little blast on Monday, is that it's also an incredible city of joy and certainly of discernment. There really is a sense of live and let live, and there's just a bubbly sense of joy, of enthusiasm, and like live for today. It's an amazing city. It's an amazing.
I've never been there, so I'm just trying to imagine from your words.
You know, probably a lot of our listeners have never been to New Orleans, and certainly we hadn't. But if you think of one of the attractions that brought us to New Orleans, aside from the fact that it's close to where Lisa and Michael are, is that it's celebrating its tricentennial at the moment. And there aren't a lot of cities, certainly in North America, that have that kind of history. So there's a real anchoring of, they've been under various, they call it 5 flags. And even that was interesting because they've been under British, French, Spanish, Confederate, and American rule. So there's all of those influences of the history. And so there were wonderful things. One of the things that I really noticed was that that there has been so much controversy in the United States about the Confederate flag and all the statues, et cetera, et cetera. They had removed the Confederate flag and replaced it with the rainbow flag of the LGBT movement.
That's very funny.
And so that was, and I think that sums up the mood and the spirit of New Orleans.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I have a Canadian flag, and the 2 bars, which are ordinarily red, on my flag are the LGBT rainbow colors. It's actually very beautiful.
Have you talked to Justin about it?
Not yet, but after the revel, I plan to. That's funny. It's also, we've reached we haven't closed the Conscious Creating with the Mother course, but we have reached the end of the sessions, I believe. We have
reached the end of the, shall we say, the formal classes.
Yeah.
The work certainly goes on. But this has been one of the most interesting, surprising classes, certainly that I've ever facilitated. And I think part of that is that Linda Dillon was a co-facilitator completely with the mother. And to come from that space for such a long period of time was amazing. And the creations that people have completed, that have surprisingly come to their doorstep, and that people are still working on, has been phenomenal. And it's really shown us, you know, we talk a lot about using the tools. And God knows we have a huge, massive toolkit. But learning how to marry and apply the creation formula and the universal laws together, to me, has been such a huge expansion. And that's continuing on. And so the online piece of that continues. And we will be looking in periods of every 3 months at the progress that the group is making. So it'll be fascinating to see how this turns out.
I've enjoyed looking at it, not only at the level of creation, but also at the philosophy behind it, because that is so revealing.
And
go ahead.
It's also a real reminder. I mean, cohabitating with the mother, well, first of all, it's been a huge gift. But it's also reminded me that our fundamental purpose of being on the planet is to create, and our fundamental purpose in creating is to fulfill our mission and purpose, our sacred soul purpose. You know, it has variations and tinges of different things in different lifetimes, but that's really the only reason why we're here, is to serve the mother, and to do that by co-creating with her. And so it's brought a deeper level, I guess, of understanding, certainly to me, but I think really to the entire circle, about why we bring forth certain situations and how we are consciously not only bringing forth, but responsible for bringing forth what we experience and what we, choose to do.
Yeah, I agree. I look forward to being able to use those, in both the laws and the creation formula, in the way, say, a carpenter uses a saw and a hammer, in a integrated and fluid fashion.
Yeah, exactly. The carpenter doesn't sit and think, well,
no, I'm going to use the hammer now.
Should I use my saw today?
Yes,
it flows, and I think that's the whole thing. And I think that's why in this class they grouped, certain universal laws together, like sacred purpose, or like balance, or like, the T group, which is transubstantiation and transformation and so on. So it's made it more workable.
Yeah, but I tell you, we're I don't think archangels tap their fingers on their desks in the off stage, but we could go on for the rest of the hour, I think.
They don't tap their fingers, but also the archangels, when they're creating, don't stop and think. Now, what was that formula again? No,
it is fluid, isn't it? That's what she's directing us to, is this state of fluidity with these things.
The fluidity, and to the point where it almost, becomes instantaneous. We don't sit and try and figure out how to tie a shoe or how to maneuver a zipper. It's just, it's there. It's fluid. We don't have to think about it. And that's where we're going. That's really what Nova Being is all about.
Oh, I'm sure you're right. Well, dear, I think you said earlier you've been talking to Michael since 3 a.m. So.
Oh, yeah. I had actually started earlier in the week.
Oh,
and,
yeah?
Yeah. And,
okay, well,
away we go.
Time for the main event, you bet. Okay, dear, thank you, and we'll give you a moment to make your transition, and then we welcome Archangel Michael on peace, what's happening in the world, etc. Archangel Michael.
Greetings, I am Michael. I am Mikael. And perhaps I will take a page out of St. Francis's book and say, you can call me Mike. The key is to call me. is to accept my ever-presence, the ever-presence of the mother of Gabrielle, of Raphael, of Francis, and of all of us, and of this council of love that surrounds you, my beloved ones. We are not going anywhere. We never have, we never will, and I say that from a place of constant movement, of constant expansion, of eternal growth, of infinite potential. And this is what I wish to reiterate and bring back to your conscious, your unconscious, your subconscious, to the very cellular structure of your being. I have said this many times, and I say it again. I claim you as the peacemakers. I claim you as the way showers. I claim you as the portals and pillars, the bringers of light, the anchors of love. You cannot ignore or forget who you are. And yes, beloved brothers and sisters, why you are here as the fulfillment, as the bringers of the dawn, as the implementers of the Mother's plan. You are the new beginning. You are the fresh start. In so many ways, for years. And if you were one of my fellow archangels, you would also know for eons I have spoken of peace. Because this is my promise and my sacred fulfillment to the Mother, Father, One. I have spoken to you about my strategic peace initiative, and you have forgotten. Why is it that it is so difficult for humans, and I mean this as the collective, to truly and deeply, in a heartfelt, committed fashion, why is it so difficult to focus on peace, to focus on love, to focus on the truth and the eternal wisdom of who you are? Often we say to you, do not allow yourself, sweet angels of light, to be distracted. Do not allow those who wish to engage or build or rebuild the old third to be the influence of your daily life, because it does not serve thee. And it most certainly does not serve the Mother. The only reason you would be placing your attention on such events and matters is simply to dispel them, to disintegrate them, to eliminate them, to transform them. Otherwise, there is no profit, there is no gain, there is no win. Great strides are being made upon this beautiful planet, upon this archangel called Gaia. Some of you when we have mentioned to you that you have been a rock or a stone, or a fairy or a deva, a river or a mountain or a hill or a tree, you have had difficulty conceiving of that, relating to that. And yet here, where you literally place your feet and breathe the air, is an archangel incarnated as a planet in the fulfillment of her promise to the mother. This is a powerful example, a role model for each and every one of you. Gaia is a peacemaker. Yes, there are times, certainly, when she shrugs her shoulders and lets you know that you are off balance or out of kilter. But by and large, she is a mother. She is an earth mother, reflecting the infinite mother and showing you, demonstrating this way to peace, this way to love. Now, peace, and that is why I have asked to speak to you this day, is breaking out upon your planet. Are there strides and moves that still have need to be undertaken? Most certainly. So often, when we speak to the collective about not just the desire, but the need for peace upon this planet, so many of the collective shake their heads, say, well, that's unlikely, that's impossible, war is the way. And of course that is true of the old third. And in some ways, that level of denial, of excuse, of distraction is discouraging for so many of you who are the light workers and love holders. And you turn to me and you say, Michael, I will keep at it. And I will continue to do the peace meditations, and I will continue to hold the vision. But within your soul, within your heart, you are discouraged, you are dismayed. And that also has need to be acknowledged. And so I offer you the encouragement this day. One of the most volatile situations upon your planet has been the situation with North and South Korea, with the meddling and the intervention, positive at times, of the United States of America. And yet these two very different individuals, Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, have come together not merely as leaders, not merely as politicians, but in a heart-to-heart connection of a shared purpose. And those who have said that peace was impossible and that it was going to end in nuclear devastation are being proved wrong by the willingness of these two men to simply speak. Not yet in Sador, but certainly in peril, and to find a commonality. The desire to thrive. The desire not to live in fear and under the umbrella of a devastation has brought to the forefront this potential for peace, this promise for peace, not out of coercion. This needs to be very strongly stated. This movement does not come from threats or coercion. It comes from the diplomacy of Moon and the sensibility of Kim Jong and the willingness and the desperate willingness to find a middle ground where the people can come together and thrive. We do not simply mean a demilitarized zone. We mean the demilitarized zone of the heart. Because in all beings, there is this yearning for love. And there is this yearning for peace, because peace is nothing more than an element of love. It is that sense of certitude and quietude and power and knowing of being in alignment with oneself. Now there are times upon the planet, and you are certainly witnessing it, where there are despots, dictators, despots that rule. And there is a belief system in those that believe that they are in democratic societies, that these dictatorial situations have need to be eliminated. And in the larger view, this is of truth. But there are also times when groups of people, let us not call them nations, when groups of people decide that they are going to learn very difficult lessons. And so a despot emerges. And you have known many upon this planet. But the raison d'etre that these beings emerge is as an expression of that collective will to be controlled, so that what happens is there is a revolt, that there is a coming forth of the desire for greater latitude and to be free. So you are seeing this ebb and flow as well. And that is a sign of human spirit growth. Sometimes there are individuals who do not know that they yearn for freedom until they are bound. It is a very strange paradigm, but so it is. Now, how do you know when there is this forward thrust, when it is hopeful? I have said to the channel, and I say to you, is it forward thrust? Are the parties involved looking towards the future, at what is possible, the dream that can be fulfilled, Or are they looking back? And you are seeing many examples of this upon your planet. And you are also seeing those that are caught in the throes of, shall we say, inertia. You see this in Venezuela, where the old regime has sold the resources of the nation, of the country, and then have been caught in an ideological quagmire. And they're still in that place where they are looking for the energy to move forward. It will come. And it will come not from the place of privilege, not from the ideologues. It will come from those who are literally living in the streets and hungry, who will demand the reconstitution of government and society that represents the needs and the desires of the people. You see situations where individuals are looking back. Yes, Netanyahu, who claims to look back at the plans of Iran. It does not matter. You are seeing evidence of how your star family is catching bombs and destroying silos. You are seeing the desire for a new tomorrow. So it is not a matter of looking back and seeing who is at fault and who is at blame. The key lies in looking forward, in what can be done rather than what has been done. You are seeing this popping up. And yes, you are also seeing the dictatorial regimes. Send the energy, yes, of course, to peace as a whole, but also send the energy to those areas that to your heart are showing promise. Yes, we continue and have said for many years to send energy, particularly to the women and children of Iraq and Iran, Syria. Now we add Syria and Yemen, Turkey. Send energy to those that are caught in between the warring forces. Because in fact, they are the bulwark. You say, well, what can I do, Mikhail, other than send energy to those places that are promising and those places that are war-torn and those places where they are tired and hungry? Beloveds, make peace with yourself. Now this sounds so simple, and it is not. So many have hurts which have turned into vasanas or core issues or grievances, and you have tucked them away as if they are prized possessions. You have locked them away like crown jewels. Often you have locked them away because you are feeling incompetent, unable to truly look at these issues. But bright angels, how can you be a pillar and a portal of love, of ascension. If you are frightened and in avoidance of looking at what has hurt and harmed you, how can you find peace if you have not found forgiveness of self and others? The other approach we ask of you on behalf of the Mother, Father, One is to make peace with all around you. Yes, make peace with the neighbor with whom you have grievance, with the city whom you do not like, with the sister or brother-in-law or aunt that you do not cherish. It does not necessarily mean engagement. Sometimes surrender and stepping back is the way to peace. We have talked about this. Most of you have already forgotten, and it is very recent that we have talked about this. Find the peace within and then extend it on every level. Now, dearest Steve, where do you wish to begin?
Boy, well, one thing I see right off the bat, Lord, is that we have to, and you have referred to this, of course, but we have to drop certain models of behavior like the social Darwinist model that life is a struggle and only the strongest are going to survive and the weak go to the wall, and it has always been so, and nature is red in tooth and claw. So that's an example of some way of perceiving the world that is embedded in so many people and needs to go, for example.
This sense of delineation, this sense of separation, of you, of us and them, it has need to be transformed. So I am not merely talking about the elimination or the shift in what you call, yes, and it is very apt, social Darwinism. Because in that, there are winners and there are losers, and it's tough luck if you're a loser. Try again next life.
Mm-hmm.
That is cruel. That is your definition of some get to go to heaven and the rest get thrust into hell. Mm-hmm. That is not the way it is. And so this sense, this shift, if you want to look at it in terms of winning, then you shift the paradigm. I don't win unless you win. You don't win unless I come along. It is, as Jesus has said, to love your neighbor literally as yourself. And it does not mean, and it never has meant, allowing your neighbor, whether it is an institution or a nation or a government, to allow them to do harm today. Quite the contrary. But it is hard, and we wish to recognize this. It is very hard to come from this place of unity and embrace if in fact you are feeling disenfranchised yourself, if you are feeling that somehow you are lacking. This is why the Mother, and all of us, by the way, are teaching you so strongly how to create, because as you are creating not merely for yourself. In many ways, and particularly I speak to this light worker community, you are the most unselfish group of beings in the universe. And we have to teach you and to refocus you to remember to focus on your sweet selves. And as you do, you are naturally including the collective. So we encourage you again, if there is something you have hidden away that is not of peace, bring it to the forefront. Share it with me. Share it with Saint Germain. Share it with Gabrielle. It matters not, but let it go.
Lord, you can use the upset clearing process. Just enter that with quotation marks around it in the search box. Kathleen presented a model of forgiveness as well. There are many ways of letting go of these crown jewels.
Yes, there are many, many approaches. There is no shortage in your toolkit, beloved ones. But think about it. Look to the situation of Korea and how dire and desperate it had become. And think of what each party is willing to let go of and to extend to find peace. And peace is so much more than the elimination of bombs, the elimination of hand-to-hand combat. It is a sense, a profound sense of rightness. It is the complete opposite, the absence of this fierce struggle. If you want peace with anyone in your life, including yourself, stop boxing themselves into a corner. It does not work. When one is in a fight or flight that becomes embedded in a mode of behavior, all the yellow and red lights of heaven light up. They do for your star family as well, where they have learned, and they have learned the hard way. And that is not the plan. Now, we do not talk of the divine plan as etched in stone, but in many ways it is. Because how can there be, literally, a deviation from the dream and the creation of the mother? Now, she has built in this aspect of free will, and she has been infinitely patient in this free will aspect, deciding that peace and love and joy are truly the desires of the individual and the collective human heart. It's taken a long time. But I come not with messages of dismal destruction. I come this day with messages of encouragement and upliftment and joy. Look around you, and you will see, with all these methods, human beings, whether it is your nephew or your next-door neighbor or the leader of another country, they are seeking ways. And even those who are seeking distraction or even seeking status quo are deciding that dropping bombs is not the answer.
Lord, could we, excuse me, could we talk about peace itself for a moment?
You know this is my favorite subject.
I had an experience of deep peace some years ago. I think it was 2015. And I was surprised to find that peace was so substantial. It felt to me as if I was standing on a granite rock. And I remember saying that to myself. And then I remember a couple of years later you actually using that word, that peace was like granite. Can you, how is it that I didn't discover that peace was airy and light, but instead I felt so substantial? I don't understand how I ended up in that place. What is peace like? Do you know what I'm saying?
You are asking me, what is love like? What is a heart like? But I am pleased to answer.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Now think about this. And I do not say this because we do not have any form of hierarchy. But there are archetypes, embedded archetypes, within your consciousness. And yes, they differ from culture to culture, but let me use myself as an example. Why do so many turn to me with the vision of my sword and shield rather than my paintbrush and harp? Why do they turn to me rather than Uriel, who is the keeper of divine knowing, the keeper of divine time? Surely this is far more important, because there is a sense of substance in my being, and in my being as the warrior of peace. Peace is solid. There are so many divine qualities that do feel amorphous, light, airy, like a spring day. And yet peace, you have this expression, you can take it to the bank. It feels like ballast. It feels like granite because it is solid. And dare I say, immutable. That is why I continue and keep emphasizing that peace within, that rock-solid granite within, when you anchor in peace, truly what you are anchoring in with a bow to Uriel is your divine knowing. That there is an order and a substance and a plan and a blueprint, and that you cannot be dislodged, that it does not waver, that regardless of rough seas or torrential rain, that sense of being substantial in the knowing continues, that it is bedrock. And it is this sense of deep anchoring in your knowing and in the knowing that allows you to maneuver so that you don't get distracted, so that you focus. There are beings yourself included, that upon your planet whose focus is laser-like, that may put their head up and look around, but who are very clear that that sense of certitude, uncertainty is not part of the human condition, personally and collectively. But someone who is anchored in peace knows this. So that things may change, they may come and go, situations, environments, people, they come and go. But that sense of knowingness does not waver. Peace is solid. And from that, you can proceed. Think of this, having that substantial anchor allows you to travel outward, upward, backward. It allows you to do this. But when you are in a lack of peace, when you are in uncertainty, you feel like a flag flapping in a 100-mile wind. And you are always wondering, is this flagpole going to hold me? So that is why peace is the bedrock, is the granite. And it is the substance from which allows you to literally anchor in physicality. It is not just the absence of war, because there are warriors of peace who are on battlefronts and still maintain the sense of peace. Many of you who listen to me this night travel with me constantly to the places of disruption of what you think of as war. It's why you wake so exhausted in the morning. It's why so many of you have been put on sabbatical now and then. In order to go forward, truly creating and co-creating, yes, with us, but also with each other, Nova Earth. This is our goal. This is the prize. In order to do that, that sense of peace has to be, that knowing of peace has to be deeply held within. Does this make sense to thee?
Well, it certainly does, and I'm trying to wrestle with it, trying to conceive of it. Now, one of the ways that I achieve that state of peace, or go about trying to achieve that state of peace, is by letting go of my vasanas, or core issues, by raising them, being with them, experiencing them through to completion, and then just letting them go. And I presume you take them to the mother.
Correct.
Now, sorry. Okay, so now as I'm doing this, I'm getting more. My mind is becoming more settled. My feelings are becoming more balanced. So I'm moving in a certain direction, right? And that direction culminates in peace. Now, am I to take away from this the sense that who I am at the deepest levels is substantial, is solid, is granite-like? I am? That's a conclusion I can reach safely?
That is a conclusion you can safely reach. Again, take it to the bank. Think of this. When you are traveling, and it is a travel, it is a journey, to this place of deep peace, you are recognizing your essence as divine. Not that you are reaching out to the divine, but that you are recognizing it and anchoring it and loving it deep within. When you have that sense of what we use in language as substance, essence, then it allows you to travel higher, because you know where you're coming from and where you're returning to. It allows you to travel out across the planet or the universe and come back. You see, when you send energy, for example, and you are fragmented, you are not working, you're not claiming the full substance of who you are. So what you send out is only a small percentage of who you are. And that also is very clear in what you think of as sacred union, sacred partnerships. You have all encountered people who can only give a little piece of who they are because they don't have that sense of full substance. So you cannot share. And often what happens is, and that is why people feel so diminished, is they do share, they do send, and then they feel empty and exhausted. Well, that is not the plan. This is the secret. When you are anchored in your substance, in your essence, in your divinity, in your bedrock, you can replicate, mirror, share all of who you are and still maintain and grow, by the way, all of who you are.
Wow. If we're to have peace in the world, Lord, I think what has to happen is that some people need to be willing to forget or turn away from whatever was the original source of the quarrel, right? Somebody has to be willing to stop trying to find out who struck the first blow and revenge themselves for it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it is a relinquishing. Someone is right, someone is wrong. Someone is at fault, someone is the victim. And you see this paradigm mirrored in all kinds of very personal and daily situations. So it is the micro to the macro. And when you don't engage in that duality, when you refuse, when you absolutely exit from that strategy, from that paradigm, then the old way, the victim perpetrator, micro macro, simply dissolves. So as we have said, there are many approaches to doing this. But think of it. If you are injured and you are holding this victim grudge against whoever has hurt you, intentionally or unintentionally, then you are perpetrating that duality. You are not claiming your peace. When you simply, and it is not denial, it is not refusal, it is simply a declaration and a redirection to say, I don't wish to live that way. I don't wish to continue living either as a perpetrator or a victim. I choose to anchor in my divine peace and knowingness that I am exactly where I need to be, and the universe that I am operating in is not out to harm me. When you do that, what happens, because there is not this friction,